so I can post this. So as I said, we finished the symposium last class, but we left on a pretty confusing note because we ended with the description of the beautiful, and I think I talked about Platonic forms, and that what we really get in that passage that I read at the end of class last time was a description of a form, the form of beauty in this case. And so this class today, we're going to be talking primarily about, I mean, exclusively really about, there might be some little subtopics that pop up, but we'll really be talking about his forms, Plato's theory of forms, which I just briefly mentioned towards the end of class last time. And so this is going to get pretty abstract. I'm going to try to make this as clear as I can, but just be warned, Plato's, it's a theory about, it's a metaphysical theory, his theory of forms. The word form, the Greek word is eidos, can also be translated as ideas. So when we talk about beauty itself, that is a form. The good, the just, these are some examples of ideal forms, and these are the things that are the true beauty, true good, true justice. What do I mean by metaphysics? Who remembers from way back when, at the beginning of the semester, we went over this? Who's got their notes handy, or you can just maybe cheat by looking at your notes? But what's a theory of metaphysics? Who remembers what metaphysics deals with? I should open the chat box because I forgot there, so you can type it in if you want. Nobody remembers. Metaphysics.
Abstract concepts.
I'm sorry, it's hard to hear you. What'd you say?
Abstract concepts.
It deals with some abstract concepts. Joy says it deals with principles instead of literal. Good guess, maybe, but no, that's not the definition I gave y'all for metaphysics. Metaphysics deals with theories concerning the nature of reality. What's real? Right? What is real? What exists? What is the nature of what exists? You should have wrote that down in your notes, guys. You should be taking notes while I lecture this stuff, right? I mean, I know I put the video on YouTube, but this whole practice of, I see this. I'm not saying y'all do this, but I see students just, they don't take notes, and they, at the end of class, take a picture with their cell phone. Don't do that. You're not learning. You're really not going to learn and retain knowledge that well unless you have a photographic memory. And if you do, you don't need to take a picture. You just remember it. You guys need to be taking notes. And so when you take this class and I ask you what metaphysics is, you can flip back to your notes if you don't remember, and you can know. So, I mean, if you're not doing that already, you should be doing it now. I mean, don't take it for granted that I post this up on YouTube, okay? But yeah, so again, metaphysics is theories that deal with what's real, what is true, what is the nature of all this. And so that's what we'll be talking about. And you could say that his theory of forms is a metaphysical theory, but it also deals with epistemology, which is a theory of knowledge. How do you know? What does it mean to know? When can you say you know something, and when aren't you justified saying you know something? And even ethics, I think you could argue that Plato's theory of forms touches on ethics. But in this lecture, and I did say, maybe that's why somebody answered abstract ideas. No, philosophy in general deals with abstract ideas, whether you're dealing with metaphysics or epistemology. But metaphysics is particularly abstract because you're talking about the fundamental nature of all things, not just like one particular type of thing or this particular. You do biology, you're like, well, what's, I'm trying to figure out life, or chemistry. I'm trying to find, how chemical elements interact with each other. But metaphysics, you're like, well, how does anything be a thing? How is a thing a thing? What are things? What things exist? It's like the most broad sort of general theory of the universe. So, bear with me, basically, is what I'm warning you. It's going to be tough, but we'll do what we can. I'll do as best I can to make this clear. Plato's theory of metaphysics, basically, again, it's known as the theory of forms. The idea is that the universe is made up of, well, there's levels of reality, basically. We'll get into all these different levels later on in the lecture. But for Plato, the highest level of reality would be the forms. So this passage that we read last time, let me find the page. I think it's page 56 in your textbook, where we get a description of the beautiful itself. Oh wait, I'm looking at the wrong textbook. I'm looking at the Descartes. This doesn't look right. It's at the bottom. No, that's not the right one. Bottom of 58, top of 59. I'll be referring to this a little bit throughout this lecture, so it'd be helpful if you have the book handy, right? So it's line 211A is where it starts, but so this description of the beautiful, okay? Back to my overall picture of Plato's theory. So for him, the universe has all these levels. At the highest level are these forms, such as the form of beauty, as it's described in our textbook. So these forms that are not physical, they're not a part of the physical reality. They're a part of this higher realm, this realm of ideas. Remember the word form, I think I mentioned this last time. The word form is translating the Greek word eidos, which could also be translated as idea. So beauty itself is an idea for Plato. True beauty is a concept that is independent. Yeah, you're right, Danielle. 58, bottom of 58, top of 59. And so, what does he say about it? It just is, okay? The idea of beauty just is. It doesn't change, right? It doesn't come to be nor pass away, neither waxes nor wanes. So beautiful things in this world, which are real for Plato, but they're less real. They have less reality. They're less true. They're not like these eternal forms that just are. That are. And here's the other thing too. I guess I left this out. We'll have to talk about this later and elaborate. These higher things, the perfect things, the forms, are the cause of the lower things. And so the higher forms help us understand the lower things because we understand beauty, because we understand true beauty. We know the form of beauty. If we do, we're able to understand what makes a thing beautiful, what makes a thing beautiful. So these forms they're higher, they're higher, they're above all else, they're outside of time and space, they don't change, and they're the cause of all these things that are. And all these things that are, as he puts it, they come to be, they pass away, but not beauty itself. All the beautiful things become less beautiful, maybe. They get old, they wither, they die, and they're gone, right? Forever, right? But beauty itself always is. There always is beauty itself, the concept of beauty. Also, it's not beautiful this way and ugly that way. So it's beautiful. It's not dependent on my mood. It's not dependent on my opinion. It's not dependent on what angle I look at it. Beauty is it's a concept, and it's just beautiful no matter what. It's not partly ugly, partly beautiful. It will not appear to him as one kind of idea or one kind of knowledge. This is the top of 59. And this is the other thing. It is not anywhere in another thing, as in an animal or in earth or in heaven or in anything else, but itself by itself. So all of these beautiful things, for Plato, they are beautiful because they really resemble beauty, true beauty, right? Their beauty is a deficient, imperfect, changing beauty. It's a beauty of appearances. It appears beautiful. It looks like beautiful. If you think back to the allegory of the cave that we covered earlier this semester, Plato's allegory, remember the shadows in the cave? They might appear like the things that they are a shadow of, but they're distorted. Right? They're elongated. They look different. They're flat, two-dimensional. The puppets are a little bit more real, but they're still puppets. The puppets that cause the shadows. And then as you go further and further up, right, that's the other thing. We'll come back actually to the allegory of the cave later, because it's very, I think, relevant here. I think when we were talking about it earlier this semester, the cave kind of represented ignorance and just blindly believing anything. And, I used it as a sort of allegory for doing philosophy and taking the journey out of the cave, okay? And it's useful for that, but it actually also has metaphysical meaning, okay? And so we'll talk a bit about that once we get through Plato's theory here, his theory of forms. So the forms, again, like the form of beautiful, it just is. And it is independent. It is somehow separate from all that is physical, but yet it causes what is physical. This is another thing that might be hard to grasp or swallow, is that the idea of beauty, for instance, is what causes beautiful things to be beautiful. And this is on 59 again. All other beautiful things share in it in such a way that when those other things come to be or pass away, this does not become the least bit smaller or greater, nor suffer any change. So it brings forth all that is beautiful in respect of it, because it resembles the beautiful itself. But even if, like, let's say all the beautiful things in the universe just poof, went away, beauty itself, he says, would exist because it doesn't have a spatial temporal aspect. It's outside of space and time, basically. Okay, and it's the cause of all that is beautiful. Right? And this is true of all other sorts of things, like goodness. There's a form of goodness. Everything that's good resembles the idea, this concept of goodness. Same thing with justice. Okay. Now, when we're talking about physical things that are a part of this world, not the higher realm of forms, these lower things are always imperfect, right? They're always going to be flawed somewhat. The notions, the ideas, the forms are perfect. They're the perfect ideal. And again, they cause the physical. And they're more real than the physical. That's one thing I think that might be the least intuitive. Most people, I would say, think of ideas as less real than physical things. If I had a concept in my mind, an idea of, let's say, a house, but I never made the house, I never built it, you'd be like, that's not a real house, it's just an idea in your head. You need to make it, then it's a house. But Plato actually has it reversed. The idea, the form of house, the concept house, is more real than the physical house. And not only that, the idea of house, the concept house, houseness, whatever that is, the quality of being a house, it causes all physical houses. Just like the beautiful is the cause of they're beautiful in virtue of participating, whatever that means, in beauty itself. All houses derive their existence from the idea of a house, just like the shadows derive their existence from the puppets and the fire and all this. The physical stuff derives its existence from the higher non-physical stuff. Can someone help me out here? Or maybe do I have to do it for you? Maybe someone could actually not help me out, help Plato out. I'm not a Platonist, by the way. I'm just trying to help. I'm trying to be as good and fair with Plato as I can, and give his argument a good hearing before we demolish it. We'll do that next time, probably. We'll look at some big flaws with Plato's theory. But one that might just be apparent to you is you might be thinking, well, how does an idea cause a thing? Right? If a form is something that's non-physical, right? Like the concept of a house. Like, let's just say that there is such a thing, that there's a perfect notion of houseness. How would you say that a house, the idea, form of house, causes a real house, a physical house?
It's manifestation. Like, once you have the idea of you can do something in your head, you put that out into the universe, I guess. Like, you say, I can build this house, then you're going to go build that house.
Good. Exactly. Right. And those are precisely the examples he uses. He says, most of these come from the Republic, by the way, if you're interested. But yeah, he talks about how the carpenter, when he makes the desk or the table, I think it is, you know, he has an idea in his mind of what he wants to bring forth, right? And then he makes it. And as he's making this table, chair, house, whatever it is, he's guided by that concept. And if he didn't have the concept, he wouldn't be able to make the thing, right? So the concept comes first. So, you know, this does kind of make sense, right? It's not, you know, it's not so crazy, but he thinks that that convention, this is something that might not be so easy to accept. He thinks that there's just a right way to make a house, and it's always existed, even before there were people, you know? And so when the first person made a house, they were already guided by this understanding of what they wanted and what made it good. You know, they wouldn't have built a house, for instance, with no roof over it. Why would you have a house with no roof? The whole point is to shelter yourself. And so, and maybe if you live in a region of the world where there's never any rain, if that exists, you probably wouldn't be able to live there because you would like just die. But, you know, so all houses are going to have roofs, right? So the part of having a house is being able to be sheltered, and part of being sheltered is having a roof. So that was always true. That was always true before there was ever a person that made a house. So these concepts, these forms, have always existed. So I don't want people to get confused. Often students will think, oh, so he means just the idea in your head. Not exactly, right? In a certain sense, sort of. Your soul, your mind, you know, is able to understand the idea. But as he says here in the book, you know, the beautiful is itself by itself. It's outside of space and time. It exists independently of any mind. But our mind is what's able to understand it. Just like our senses, our eyes, our ears, you know, our hearing and our sight, those are used to see the visible. We can see the physical material world with our body. It's our mind and our soul which is able to understand concepts, forms, and those are real, and they've always existed. So, you know, as you say, you know, the guy has the idea, the woman, whatever, they have a conception of what they're going to build, and then they bring it forth. But now we have to say, well, wait a minute, he says everything's like this. So, you know, what about things that are like natural physical things, you know, like a tree? He's going to say that the idea of a tree caused a tree. You know, when we're talking about houses and chairs and tables, then that kind of makes sense. Okay, some person, some human being conceived a thing they wanted to build, and then they physically did it. And so, yes, the idea caused, I guess you could say, caused the thing. But how does that framework, it seems like that framework kind of falls apart when we look at things like trees and plants and other things. You know, how does the idea of tree cause a tree? Anybody have any clue of what Plato might say to that? How he might explain that relation?
How you talk about like the original, like the first tree, or like since then?
Well, according to him, every tree that exists is it's like an imperfect copy of the ultimate form of tree, the concept treeness, I guess, for lack of a better word. And so it kind of is like, okay, well, I see how, like, okay, there's an idea of house, we make a house, humans make houses, but humans don't make trees. So how does he? Yeah,
does he believe in God?
Yes. Good. Yeah, you got it. Yeah. So then what? What makes the tree?
I mean,
Yeah. According to Plato. Yeah. You're right there. You're on it. Yeah. Just say it. It's one word.
God.
Yeah, God made. God made the tree. Exactly. Well, it's kind of complicated. If you're really interested, you could read his dialogue Timaeus, where he argues for this. And most of us philosophy professors and scholars seem to think of Plato as a monotheist. That is still controversial. It's not for sure. What exactly, but if you read the Timaeus, he seems to think that there's at least this ultimate being, okay, who is perfect. It's like a perfect mind who understands the forms, understands all the truth about what is truly beautiful, what is truly good, what is truly just. And in Timaeus, it's his dialogue where he's trying to figure out what likely caused the universe and why the universe is the way it is. It's sort of his cosmology, what caused the beginning of time, and he thinks that this ultimate being, for lack of a better word, God, ordered everything. And so this being, which is non-physical, has this direct knowledge of the forms and was able to create, I guess, trees in this example. But the God didn't make the trees because God is so perfect and doesn't want to mess with physical stuff. So there was always like a demiurge, this go-between, this sort of builder God. And so the ultimate mind sort of directed this demiurge to build all things. So yeah, so apparently God has the idea of treeness, the perfect tree, and every imperfect tree that we see in nature is a replica, an imperfect copy of that divine, form of treeness or whatever, if that makes any sense. Yeah.
I feel like that's why he's questioning everyone. Like, what I got from this is like, everyone is imperfect, right? So everyone came from this one God that he believes. So everyone he questioned, like he gets all those knowledge and he's like adding everything up and be like, okay, so like if I ask everyone questions and understand more about everyone, I feel like I'll be closer to the God itself, the one who created everything. So I feel like that's why he's trying to do all this stuff.
Right. No, that's a good comment. I would agree with you for sure. In fact, there's a word for it. What you described is a good way of describing, and I'll get to this later in the lecture, and I'll give you a more technical definition. But the word is dialectic, and it's on my handout. But yeah, it's sort of going around, like you said, and no one's perfect, and knowing you're not perfect, and going around and trying to get different perspectives on truth together, and then maybe we can get more and more perfect and more perfected or something like this. So maybe the first chair that was ever built was not the best chair, but so it was very far from that perfect form of chairness, right? But eventually through history, through us debating, craftsmen come together and say, I could build a better chair than that. Oh, really? So they were closer to that idea. And so, through time, we developed better and better chairs, more comfortable, more sturdy. And this process he might describe as dialectic. So we're getting closer and closer to the truth by examining it from as many angles as we can, and sort of bouncing ideas off each other. So good. Why does he think that these have to exist? He's got a few arguments for forms, and I'll go over a couple. I don't know how much time we have. I don't want to spend too much time on this, but he's got several arguments for forms. Some of his most popular arguments are, they're known as linguistic arguments. I didn't come up with that, but I'll write that term up here in the chat box. Is anybody familiar with what that means? What are linguistics? Maybe there's some Spanish speakers here. You know what lingua means? What is lingua? You ever had lingua?
Well, it's like language.
Right, linguistics, right. Yeah, the word lingua
yeah, because like
tongue.
Yeah, because like
right.
in my language, I'm Filipino, right? So we have like a near language with Spaniards because we were colonized. So we have lenguaje.
Oh, lenguaje. That's how you say it? Okay.
Which is language, yeah.
Right. Interesting. Yeah. I grew up in Texas, so I'm more used to like the Mexican Spanish and usually like very slangy too. So, but yeah, lingua means tongue. But yeah, linguistics, right? Yeah, your manner of speaking. They study language, and I call this argument. I haven't even given you the argument yet, but the argument is a linguistic argument because it's sort of based on language, on the way we talk, and on conventions of language, and so. I'll use words like pen, for instance. So that's a word that we use in the English language to denote these things. I've got this pen right here. But wait a minute. I have this pen as well, okay? But they're different. I've got this one over here, and I've got this one right here. So why do I call them the same thing? You know what I mean? I'm saying pen. You're like, yeah, what's your point? You might be confused, but you know what I'm saying. So how do you know what I'm saying? And why don't I have a different name for every different thing? Why don't I call this a pen and this a hen? And then, this is a spin and this is a Schwinn. I've got, why don't I just call them all? They're all different. I mean, they're not exactly alike. They're not exactly equal. So why do I call them by the same name? What allows me? And you're able to understand me when I do it. You're not confused. You're like, well, wait a minute, why'd you call
This
that?
is from the same, because it's from the same concept. Like it writes, like you use it for writing. So I feel like that's why.
Yeah, your answer is absolutely perfect for Plato. It's that's so great. Like you must think like him, or maybe you've studied him before and you knew the answer I was looking for. Most students actually will say something like this. They'll say, "Oh, well, you use it for the same thing. It has the same purpose." Which I think Plato would say that's included in what you just said, because you said, "Oh, it's the same concept. It's this, and we all have this idea." And so Plato would say, well, part of the concept is that it has a function. For Aristotle, who I don't think we'll have too much time to talk about Aristotle this semester, but I hope that next class we can say a few things about Aristotle. He seems to think of form in these terms, that form is just function. It's just what you use it for. I use this to write. I use this to write. I use both of them to write. Their function is the same. Their form is the same. But I think Plato has it much more like the way you described it. That no, when I say pen and you say pen, we got a concept in our mind. We have the same idea, and that's why we're able to understand each other. We're able to communicate because we have the same understanding of the same notion. We're able to talk about things like circles and squares, triangles. Even though there's all these different shapes and things that are shaped like that in the world, we understand the concept of a circle. We understand the concept of a triangle. And so for him, yeah, it's sort of, that's sort of a linguistic argument. And then there's, I guess, these sort of mathematical arguments. What is a triangle? What is a square? What don't we believe in these things? Does anybody in here who's watching, do you not believe in circles? Do you think circles are like they don't exist? Who believes that circles don't exist? That they're fake, that they're like unicorns, like circles, that's a fairy tale. You believe in circles? Yeah, everybody believes, right? You don't believe in circles? Who said that?
I said, what do you mean?
What do I mean? Well, you see on the screen there, do you see that circle? That's a circle, right?
Yeah.
So do you believe that it exists?
Yeah.
Okay.
I learned in math. So.
Right. Yeah, but is that really a circle though? Like if you went and measured it, would it be exactly 360 degrees?
Yeah.
Actually, it wouldn't. It wouldn't. It actually wouldn't. If you don't believe me, go ask your math professor. Trust me. There's no such thing as a circle in nature. There's no such thing as a circle in the real world.
You mean in nature?
Yeah.
Oh.
Or even that picture, even the picture I have here on my computer screen, that's not really a perfect circle. If you could zoom in really, really close, you could see that it's not exactly 360 degrees. You could see all the little pixels. It's always imperfect. There's no such thing as a perfect circle. In order to be perfect, how wide could the width of the line be around it? To be exactly 360 degrees, the line would have to be 0. It can't have any thickness at all because it's equally distant. Every point is equally distant. So if it has any thickness, it's going to be a little bit off. Again, if you're really not following me, just take my word for it and go look it up later. There is no such thing as a perfect circle, okay? What I have here on the screen, Plato is going to say, represents a circle, okay? It is, what about spheres? Is there such a thing as a perfect sphere? I don't know. I don't think there would be. They're probably going to be off they're all going to be off a little. Every sphere is going to have a little bit of roughness. Some are so smooth that the smoothness makes it imperceptible. You can't see the imperfections, so it appears to be perfect. Remember, Plato makes a big deal about this distinction between appearance and reality. So you might have a very smooth, like a I don't know, I don't have anything like that in here in my office, but you might have you ever see those metal orbs, they're real smooth, or a crystal ball, and it looks like a perfect sphere without any blemish. but I guarantee you it's not absolutely perfect. Okay, it's not without any sort of roughness at all. It's just imperceptible to our touch, right? Maybe if you were like a microscopic organism, you could see all the ridges. So
I feel like, you know, everything we talk about is not perfect because it's made by humans, and humans are not perfect. So I feel like all these ideas are not perfect. Like, we can get closer to perfection, but we can't be perfect. Like, everything that we make is not, like, I mean, robots doesn't really make perfect things because it's made by humans. So like, there's some something difference. Like, I don't know, something like that. But it's what
he would expand what you said further, though, because he would say nothing that's in this world that's physical, nothing is perfect, because you know, it's, for one, it's changing. You know, everything that exists that has matter that's physical is in a process of deterioration and growth and change. So it's unstable. And for him, that's a bad thing, right? You know, you know, these ideas don't change. Remember, what's beautiful is beautiful. What makes a circle, that idea of circularity is always the same. But even if we go beyond man-made objects, I mean, you're right. Of course, humans make stuff that's going to be imperfect. But even in nature, Plato's going to say there's no such thing as a perfect tree in nature. Every tree is deficient. Even if it's the most healthy, most beautiful tree in the universe, it still is going to get old, or it's still not absolutely perfect, or in one moment the wind might shake it so it doesn't look perfect, or, you know, or it might just appear perfect. It's not the idea, which is this eternal, unchanging thing. So, so again, the forms are these perfect blueprints. One student used the term blueprint last semester. That's kind of a good analogy. But yeah, these are like archetypes, and everything in the universe that we see through our senses is, as you put it, Rev, obviously imperfect. So knowledge. Yeah, what were you gonna say? Someone's gonna jump in.
I was gonna say, so where are these perfect, everlasting things that Plato says exist and that are we have made copies of? Because, like, if there's a perfect tree that doesn't wither, like, does he ever explain like where it would be?
Well, that's one of the big problems. He tries to, in his later dialogues, he tries to explain. He doesn't want to give a location because he says that these exist outside of time and space. They're not in time and space. So, you know, our world keeps changing and moving, and there's cycles and seasons and things like this. But what a circle is doesn't change. What a triangle is doesn't change. It just always is and always has been. It's in, we jokingly in philosophy, we call it Plato's heaven, right? All the forms are just in Plato's heaven, this higher sphere of reality. But it's almost just a bad question to ask, right? Where are they? Where are they? They're not anywhere, right? They just are. And I don't think that's a very satisfactory answer, but that's pretty much the initial answer he gives until his later career. And then he tries to, and essentially what you're kind of asking, I don't know if you realize this, but you're also kind of asking is, how do they interact? If there are all these other things that are perfect and tree-like and beautiful-like, they're not really beautiful or really trees because they're just imperfect. Well, how do they come from this perfect one? How do they spring forth? So that's, you know, that I kind of got that out of your comment a little bit.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
And that's a big problem. Yeah, he doesn't really have a good idea. You know, he just, God guides it or whatever. And also too, this seems like a bit of a cop out, but it does make sense given what he says. He says you really can't know fully true beauty, true forms. This kind of ties in, I think, what Rev was saying earlier. You know, we're human, we're imperfect. How are we going to actually get at the perfect beauty? He says there's hope for us, though. There's hope for us. Not now. We're kind of screwed right now. But there's a way. What were you going to say?
I was saying I just read in another class I was reading some William Blake. He basically talks down that kind of speak. He's like, we're like, when people who are in a imperfect place or in a negative space, you point out how there's hope in the far future. You don't know it and you can't comprehend it.
Right.
But it's there. And I was just funny that I'm reading a guy who basically criticized that type of thought.
Right. Yeah. It's been a long time since I read William Blake, but yeah. Where does he say? Is this like the Marriage of Heaven and Hell? Is that what y'all are reading? Or? I don't know.
It's those poems like we just read like the Chimney Sweeper poem.
Okay. So Chimney Sweeper. So like the songs of Innocence and the songs of what's the I don't know. Anyway, yeah. So yeah, I don't think Blake was a very he was, I guess, influenced a bit by the classics and stuff, but yeah, definitely I don't think Plato would have liked him, and I'm sure he didn't care much for this sort of talk. This is I think this is kind of debatable. I would say I'm more sympathetic to the William Blakes than I am the Platos, but I can kind of see the point that Plato might have, this idea, and but we still haven't answered my question, and I think you already know the answer just judging by your comment there. What are we hoping for? We're hoping for having knowledge of the beautiful. Okay, how are we ever going to get it? What do you think we're ever going to find it? If we can't find it now, why can't we? And when are we going to find it?
I guess we'd find it in death.
That's exactly right. So it's because we're in our physical body that we're always going to be a part of the physical world, and so we're always going to be attached to our senses. So it's not until we die, and even then he's kind of, at least I got to give him this, at least he's honest about it. He says, maybe, he's like, and when we die, maybe our soul will escape our body and we'll be able to understand the forms like fully. And so it's like you said, it could be false hope. His defense of this, though, and this is where I kind of think, yeah, maybe he's got a point. I'm kind of on the fence about this now. Is Socrates, in one of these dialogues, Phaedo, when he's facing death and he's talking about the afterlife and what he thinks is likely to happen, he goes over this very intricate system of rewards and punishments, and he talks about the afterlife and what it's going to be like. And he says, if you live the life of the philosopher and you detach yourself from the physical, and you cling to the higher realm of forms, the spiritual and intellectual realm, then you'll welcome death. When you die, your soul will want to leave your body. But if you live a life that's attached to the material, you're not going to like it. You're going to come back and reincarnate. So if you live this, wise life of the philosopher, you'll be rewarded with this great wisdom in death, and you'll be detached from your body. Some think that he was influenced by Hinduism in this, by the way. Plato did travel to India. But you might be thinking, I hear you right now, you're like wanting to jump in. You're like, well, wait, come on. Like, how do you know? False hope, William Blake, right? But he kind of, go ahead.
It's not just that. I was just, so like, how does he view the Greek gods? Does he believe in Zeus, Ares, Aphrodite, Dionysus, and all those?
That's a complicated question. It really is. I mean, that's really a question, I think, for Plato scholars. I'll give you my take. I think he was paying lip service to them to avoid controversy, but I don't think he took them very seriously. I think he thought of the Greek gods as sort of forces, maybe, in nature, or maybe personifications. Almost like I think you were the one that was talking about this after class one day. You were kind of sounding like a guy named Feuerbach. I don't know if that was you, but somebody was talking about, gods being this sort of, our own ideas of ourselves projected onto these deities. But it seems to me like Plato might have thought of the Olympian gods, Zeus and all of them, as sort of this. But my take is that he was really a monotheist. If you read the Timaeus, it seems like there is this ultimate one God that is really the God that we should be emulating, and that we should be devoting our respect to, and that's the God of Plato. But I mean, I don't want to speak like I'm not a Plato scholar. I know a lot more about him than probably some of my colleagues. I studied him quite a bit in grad school, but there's people out there that have written books about that. So I'm sure there's like debates, about it. But for me, I mean, my reading is, he sort of like, he used the Greek gods and Greek mythology, but it was sort of like what he would call a useful lie, that it was sort of a dumbed down version of truth, right? The gods weren't really like Homer said they were. Zeus didn't cheat on his wife. Gods don't cheat on their wife. Gods don't have lust. You know, gods are beautiful and perfect and wise. They don't act like the gods in those stories. So, you know, I wish I had a better answer for your question, but that's about all I want to say. Otherwise, I feel like I'm, you know, interpreting, you know, and adding too much of my own. But yeah, you're right. And but his response though, this is like kind of what I was going to say is, you know, to your initial objection is, you know, maybe like William Blake says, you know, why this false dream, why this false hope? Why don't we just like, you know, face up to the darkness? And you know, Plato argues, or Socrates is the one talking, but he says, now look, maybe I'm wrong. You know, we can't know. You know, he says in the Apology, remember, we don't know what happens after death. So he's like, you know, this is just what I think is likely given the way the gods are. I think that they will reward good people and they will punish bad. So I could be wrong, but I think I'm right. And then he says, and this is the argument really, which I find somewhat compelling. He says, even if it's not true, I'm still going to live a better life believing it. And you know, maybe, you know, like if you believe that, you know, being virtuous and wise and seeking truth is going to make you, maybe it will, you know, make you be a good person. It kind of reminds me of this film, one of my favorite movies. It's a movie called Crimes and Misdemeanors. And it's about this man who is very respected in his community. He's what is it when you're an eye doctor? Oh, geez, I used to know it. Ophthalmologist, I think.
Ophthalmologist.
Yeah, but he's really respected. I think at the opening scene, he gets like a reward at some charity event, you know. So he's well respected. He's married, got a family, and is optometrist. Yeah, and anyway, he has a mistress who he's been seeing for a while, and he's been telling her that he wants to get a divorce and that he loves her, and he kind of seems sincere. I think he's on the fence about it. Well, she says, forget it, man, I'm going to tell your wife about everything. And so he freaks out, and he has a brother who's like this mobster guy, and he hires his brother to get a hitman to kill this mistress. And so, and this happens very early in the movie. So, you know, he murders this woman who he's been seeing because he knows that if his wife finds out about it, that she'll divorce him and that he'll lose all his respect. Everybody that looks up to him as this role model will think of him as this, you know, he'll be shamed. So, you know, he kills this woman. But then the rest of the film, he's racked with guilt. And he wants to turn himself in because he feels so horrible for what he's done, you know. So he's just, you know, the whole movie you think he's going to turn himself in. And so there's a scene where he goes to visit his childhood home. And he's a Jewish man, so his father was actually a rabbi. And so he goes to visit his childhood home. You know, some different woman is living there, but she's real nice and lets him come in. And he walks into the kitchen and he has a flashback, and it shows this scene of his family sitting around the Passover meal, the Pesach, the Seder meal, if you're familiar with the Judaism. And his father's a rabbi, but his mother was an atheistic, professor, intellectual type. And so the father is here doing the ritual meal and being very, religiously observant. And the mother is mocking him and just saying, what a fool you are. We just survived the Holocaust. Where was your God when Hitler was killing 6 million Jews? You're a moron for believing this. And well, real quick, I'm almost done. And then he looks at her and he says, maybe you're right. Maybe I am a fool, but I'm a better person because of it. I live a better life believing it. Yeah, go ahead. What were you going to say?
I was going to say, so if his dad's a rabbi, his mom's an atheist, how did they even get together? Well,
she lost her faith. She lost her faith during the war because she saw so many people die. And she said, God did nothing about it as my people were slaughtered by the millions. So she lost her faith. And I guess they still love. But this does happen, Danielle. I know several people who are married. I've met them that they had an atheist and a Christian married. It's possible. It does happen. The world is full of all kinds of people, and yeah. So I never understood. I would think that if I were a Christian, I would be worried about my spouse going to hell, and and if I was an atheist, I would kind of feel like, how could you it seems like you don't care about me going to hell. Like, I don't believe in hell because I'm atheist, but like, you're okay with me burning, like, according to your faith, that's what's going to happen to me, you know? So I can see why you'd be confused, but it's just, you know, people work it out, I guess, you know? Honestly, I think what it is people aren't really as religious as they think they are, you know? I don't think they really believe as deeply as they think they do. You know, they believe that I'm Christian. Well, they're Christian because their parents were Christian. And cause, you know, it's not because they like go to church every Sunday. And so if they meet somebody and they love them and they want to get married with them, and that person's like not their same faith, you'd be surprised, you know. But back to the point I was trying to make. You know, I think that this rabbi in the movie, you know, when he's talking to his atheist wife, he's got a bit of a point. You know, let's say that it is a fairy tale, as she says. Let's say it is all made up. It makes him have respect for his, you know, his traditions. He has respect for his people and, you know, have family and things like that. So, you know, maybe it is good. You know, I don't know. On the other hand, and this is sort of my pushback, does belief in an afterlife where you're rewarded always make you behave like in a good way? And you know, I'll put it more plainly. Are people who are very religious? Yeah, someone said no.
It depends on the prerequisites.
Yeah, well, yeah. Could you expand on that? Like, what do you mean?
So, like, there in some religions there is like such a thing as like you have to. So some require you to act a certain way to get certain things.
Right.
So it's like, I mean, like in Christianity, there's like there are the good works, but it's more so that you have to believe that Jesus Christ is your Lord and Savior in order to get in. Like, you can be as good as you are. If you don't have true faith, you're out of luck. But then there's also the belief that you were chosen already. Everything is predetermined. And then when you go
predestination, yeah.
Then when you go to like Muslim, like Islam, like there's certain sects where it's like, oh, I'm gonna go to, if I kill myself if I kill people and doing this, then I get all these rewards. And then Buddhism, like, you have to be truly selfless, or certain aspects of Buddhism, like you have to be truly selfless or give up like external things, and then you get to be but then they want to be reincarnated. Like, reincarnation is a good thing. So I mean,
well, ultimately, they want to be released from the cycle of, you know, if you do a good deed or you die selflessly, I guess it's progress. But ultimately, you want to get out of that. But yeah, I mean, those are all good examples. I mean, I think we could probably think of examples from every major religion. I think, like, basically your point. I think the essence of it is that it really depends on, I guess, which faith you have, what you believe is the right thing for the gods want you to do. You know, there's a lot, you know, it's not just unequivocally, oh, if you think that there's a reward for you in the afterlife for being good, that you'll be a good person. It depends on what you mean by good. Like you said, you know, some faiths might say, well, if you die for God and murder people that aren't believers, then that makes you good. And so that would not necessarily lead to a good life, you know?
And even like in faiths, there's like different shades of each faiths within faith. So like I said that about, like, there's that one Muslim person might think that another Muslim person doesn't believe that, or and then same thing in Christianity. And
right. I mean, look at, like, I think to me it's like, I can't imagine someone like Martin Luther King Jr. without his faith. Like, I think that his faith was so essential to his sort of his view of himself and his place in history, and I think it gave him strength and probably inspired him. I mean, I can't speak for the man. I mean, I wasn't in his head, but, you know, just hearing him talk with such conviction, you know, it seemed like, man, I can't imagine him without that belief. On the other hand, look at what some Christians did during the Crusades. So it's like you could have like different interpretations of the same basic text.
And they don't even read the same thing.
And they don't even agree. You know, it would be different translations or whatever, right? And so, yeah, they don't agree what it means or whatever. So I think it's like you have to sort of, this could be true, but we have to sort of put this with a big caveat, I think, you know. So anyway, I think go ahead. You were going to say something?
I do think that like when you brought up Martin Luther King, like, I think he takes the Jesus aspects of the Bible to heart. And I think if you live by that, by those aspects, you know, how like treat others as you would like to be treated, or do not judge so like immediately, or like
Right.
take everyone on individual basis. I think if you live like that, then there are good quality, but you know, we already said that that's only one
Right.
aspect.
Right. Yeah, exactly. I think it can be, like, I'll give him that. It can be an inspiration for really, really great stuff, but not always, you know. But let's bring it back to the forms. I'm let me see, how am I doing on time here? Oh, we're doing fine. We're good. I thought I was in a big hurry, but I'm not. So, yeah, I think honestly his best argument for forms is in, you know, these sort of geometrical arguments, because he's going to say, look, we all believe circles exist, but we know that they don't exist in the physical world. So where do they exist? It's just an idea, it's just a concept, etc. Okay. You know, and really I think the thing is too, like, the idea of a circle is something that's pretty universal. When it comes to things like chairs, you know, you might have a concept of a chair. Like I say, what is a chair? Think of chairness, you know, the concept of being a chair. You know, you might have a different thing in your mind than me. They might resemble each other and whatever, but they're going to be a little different. But when it comes to things like, you know, squares and triangles and, you know, equality and things like that, just mathematical concepts, those are all the same for everybody. I'm going to come back to this too, because we're going to get to what's called Plato's divided line. And this divided line, don't worry about writing and jotting all this down yet. I'm going to come back to it in a moment. This is supposed to be like a diagram of all the different levels of reality. Remember how I said earlier that higher realm of forms is the highest, it's the most real. And as you get to the physical realm, it gets like less and less real. This is a perfect sort of, it's supposed to line up perfectly with the sort of metaphor we get in Plato's cave story, right? The allegory of the cave. So, you know, for each level of reality, it's represented by a section of the story, right? A part of the story. So we'll come back to this in just a moment. But there's a couple things I want to ask. Yeah, Michael says a big rock against the wall equals chair. Yeah, like I don't know how long ago you posted that, but I just noticed it. But that's a good example of kind of, I was saying, like, maybe the first chair was kind of crap, but it was like close to the good chair, but it wasn't that great of a chair. And every new innovation in making furniture has, you know, improved upon that. What about things that are bad? This is a question you might ask Plato. You know, he says that all these forms, they're like the perfect blueprint of the physical things. They exist independently. And so he says that there's a form of goodness. He actually thinks that's the highest form of all. We'll come back to that in a minute. Why is the good the highest? You know, there's some forms are higher than others. Why is good at the top? But what is he going to say about things that are bad? You know, if you say that that was a bad movie, and you want to say that was a bad meal, or that was a bad lecture, I didn't understand a word of it, right? Maybe that's this lecture, I don't know. You know, what do you think he's going to do with that? Do you think that he's going to say that there is a form of badness, just like there's a form of goodness? He seems to be committed to that, because he says, well, look, here's a pen, here's another pen, there's a bunch of pens, so penness exists, right? There's a beautiful thing, there's another beautiful thing, so beauty must exist. So it seems like he'd have to apply that to being bad. Look, there's a bad thing, there's a bad thing, badness itself exists. But, you know, so what do you think? Is there a form of the bad? Somebody was about to jump in. What were you going to say?
I think maybe he'll say that it's imperfect. or
Yeah, that's pretty much, yeah. I was going to phrase it differently. But yeah, if the form is perfect, then but in a way, anything's going to be imperfect, because any chair is going to have, it's not going to be the perfect form. But I guess some are less perfect and some are more, like some are closer to perfect and some are less. I guess like Michael's
These-
example, Yeah, like Michael's example of the big rock up against the wall as a chair, like that's like really far removed from the perfect form of chair. I guess it kind of resembles a good chair, but it's not that good. So there's some
I
that are
think it's
better. Yeah.
I think it's based on the satisfaction of the person. Like he would know if it's bad if he wasn't satisfied with it, but he would know if it's really good if he was satisfied with it. So it's just based on the person's concept of satisfaction. Like what does he want to get from this? Like what does he want to get from that? Like it's just based on that. I feel
Well,
like
that's Plato wants to get away from that because that sounds too much dependent on the person. He wants to say there's a right way to build a chair, and I think you've got a better point. I think this is more Aristotle. Aristotle's like, well, we have to know what the purpose of the thing is first. What is it being used for, and then we know why it's good or why it's bad. And the purpose is often dependent on the person, right? If you have a person who's very tall, they might need a taller chair. You have a person who's, got little stubby legs, they need little short stubby legs on the chair, right? But for Plato, he's like, no, there's a correct and a right way, and it's beyond a physical. That's what's kind of confusing. I don't know if he seems to be like losing us in the ether, eventually. But he's going to say, kind of coming back to what I think it was Ita that said this, it's imperfect, or the way I was going to phrase it, probably even better, more accurate to Plato, is it lacks goodness. It's a lack of goodness. So this is a concept that was influential throughout medieval philosophy and even medicine, right? People thought of you're sick. It's not that you have bad things in you, you lack good. So we need to restore the good things to you. So a bad chair, I guess like this chair I have on the right that does not look very comfortable. It might look kind of interesting, but yeah, it's a really crappy chair. Like this chair with all the spokes and looks dangerous to sit in. For Plato, he'd say it resembles the perfect chair less. It's less like the form of chair, and the good chair is more like the perfect chair. So why do you think, does anybody, I guess I might have to explain this because it's not the most obvious, but I'm curious, maybe you have an idea. Why do you think the good would be the highest form of all? Why would that be the most, important of all the forms? I guess I should probably give you a couple clues. He says that, about the forms. He says that they are what allow us to understand something. So when we see something and we say it's beautiful, or we see something, so we say it's circular, the reason we're able to say that is because we have this understanding of what it means to be circular, what it means to be square, whatever we're looking at. Okay, that understanding is based on that form. Okay, and that form again is perfect. That form tells us about the thing. So there's this relationship between the forms and the thing of understanding. And there's another relationship, which we talked about earlier, of causation, okay? That the forms cause certain things, okay? So keep those two things in mind, right? Forms allow us to understand something, and they cause the thing. The form of beauty helps us understand what a beautiful thing is and what makes it beautiful. And the form of beauty causes things that are beautiful to be beautiful. They're beautiful in respect of the fact that they resemble the beautiful itself. Okay, so keep those two things in mind, right? Understanding, forms help us understand, and forms cause. And the forms are perfect. I guess that's three things. They're perfect. And the more simple, Plato says, the more simple and the more broad and the more general a form is, the more it applies to more things. Okay, the more simple, the more general, the more basic a form, an idea is, the more it applies to more things. And the more important it is, the higher it is in this hierarchy, it's a higher form. So for instance, if I look at these shapes here, I got a square up here in the upper right corner. A square is a pretty simple concept in geometry. Four-sided shape with equally distant sides. So that's pretty simple, right? Any four-sided shape where they're all equal length. Well, for Plato, that is a pretty high form, squareness, being a square. But the form of equality is even more basic and even more general. Because to understand what a square is, a four-sided shape with equal sides, I need to know what equal means. What does it mean to be equal? I can't know what a square is if I don't know what equal is. Square has equal sides. I have to know what a side is. It has four sides. What's a side? It's a line segment, right? So a line segment is a more basic, simple concept. In order to understand any shape, I have to know what a line is, or a line segment. So you see how this works? And then I guess like a point is even more simple than all that. And then, so understanding and causation, right? So the square is caused by a bunch of, that's kind of a weird way of talking, but we have to keep in mind, we have to cut Plato a little slack here. The word cause in Greek has a lot more connotations. But you can't make a square without having lines, right? So in a sense, the square is caused by lines. So back to my original question. Again, you still might be confused. I know this is very abstract, but my original question was, why do you think the good is so high up, right? If a dot is like, you know, the most general, it applies to more shapes. Every shape is made of lines. Lines are made of dots. So the dot is the highest. Why do you think why is the good the highest form? The beautiful's right below it, but he says the good is the highest form of all. In fact, let me show you a picture here of this. Yeah, go ahead. What were you going to say?
So maybe good is the highest form because since we'll never achieve beautiful, good is the best chance we'll get at understanding what that potential could be. Maybe.
Good, that's a very good guess, but no, actually, he does think that the beautiful is right below the good. So he actually thinks that you're more likely to achieve the beautiful than the good. So the beautiful is right below it. Ariana she answered it, but I already gave that answer. It's the simplest. The good, but why is it the simplest? Like he says simple and general. So by general, that means it applies to all things, right? So everything is good? In a certain sense, he's going to say yes to that. He's going to say, yeah, actually it is. Remember, he has this belief that the universe was ordered by this perfect mind, right? That understood the forms, that understood what was good and why it was good. And that being, God, we'll call him God, that being ordered the universe as best as it could be. Okay, I mean, it's physical, so it's imperfect, but it's the way it is because it's good that it's that way. It's supposed to be that way. So that's one reason, right? That
in a Christian way, in the Bible, it says like God created heaven and earth, and he said it was good. Like God
Right.
created the man and
Right.
woman, and he said it was. I mean, the man and it was good, like the sky and something like that. So he said good, not beautiful. He said
right,
it was good.
right.
So I feel like, in a sense, it's more on like, I don't know how to say it. Like, it was good, not great, but it was good.
Well, no,
I don't
actually,
know, like
I know what you're saying. I know what you're saying. Like usually when we say something's good, it's not the same thing as perfect, right? It's like it's good enough, right? Like it's just right. Like you don't need to change it. That's the way it should be. Like don't touch it, kind of thing, right? I think that is sort of.
don't ask for more because it's good.
Right,
like,
right.
It's perfect. Like you can still seek perfection, but good means you're like it's enough for me.
Right.
Like I'm good with that. I don't know, something like that.
He thinks this idea of goodness, and I think there are a lot of parallels. So you're right to see that. There are a lot of parallels between Plato's metaphysics and kind of the Christian worldview, from like the Old Testament. But I mean, there's reasons for this too, because a lot of the early Christian philosophers, I'm particularly thinking of Saint Augustine and also to a lesser extent Aquinas, but they both are very influenced by some of this thought of Plato, and they draw from the Bible. That quote you just gave is one example, right? And yeah, the idea is that all that is an imperfect copy of this higher realm of forms, but it was ordered that way because it's as best as it can be, and it's moving towards perfection. And so there's a theological reason, I think, that for the good. I was about to say this before, I think it was Ija that jumped in the story Allegory of the Cave. Unfortunately, in this picture, you don't see the sun. But remember in the story, I told you the guy gets out of the cave and he's blinded by the light of the sun and it's too bright. The sun is supposed to represent the form of the good. It's the highest form of all. And so he uses this metaphor that the good, the sun, it makes the intelligible world intelligible, right? We have this lower realm. Now I'm at the divided line. The visible realm, the physical realm, that's the lower realm. I guess that's the cave and the shadows and all that. Once we get through the stairway, right, we're walking up in this third, we're learning a science, we're learning how to think, get more intellectual, and then we arrive at understanding and we see the good. We're blinded by the light of the sun, right? But just like the actual sun makes the visible world visible, makes the things that we see able to be seen, Plato thinks that this idea of goodness makes us understand all that is. Everything that is that way because it should be that way, because it's good that it's that way. So if we understand goodness, we understand why. And another reason, this is another argument, I guess, I'm going to ask a question. What do you think he thinks about the forms themselves? Are the forms good or are they bad? Or neutral? What do you think? Good, bad, neutral?
Neutral.
That's a good guess, but he actually says no. The forms are the best things of all. They're the one things you can have knowledge of, right? When you're here in the lower realm, the visible realm, the realm of our senses, all the things that you have are just opinions and beliefs. You can only have knowledge of the ideas, right? The idea of the circle or whatever. All the things you see through your senses are imperfect copies. And so the forms are, you might say, the perfect version. Okay, they are good. And so if every form is good, like the form of chair is what a good chair is supposed to be, and the form of circle is what a good triangle, a perfect circle would be, then the forms themselves are good. And to understand the forms, which are the real objects of knowledge, you better know the good, because good is something that causes them all and applies to them all and allows us to have understanding of them all. And so is the beautiful. He seems to think that the forms are also all beautiful, and that's why beauty is so high up there as well. But I'm getting really short on time. I just noticed it's like 15 after, so we've got like less than 5 minutes here. So let me I'm going to introduce the divided. Yeah, you want to say something real quick? I guess not. Never mind. I'm just going to go through this real quick. And then I was supposed to save some time at the end of class for the papers, so I'll stick around for that just in case. But give me like 4 or 5 minutes to go through this. We're going to elaborate on this later. But as I said, right, part of his theory, part of Plato's theory, is that the whole universe, all reality consists in these levels. So some things are more real than others. As we get to the higher, the intellectual realm, things become more real, more true. They don't change, right? They're not in a process of change the way this physical world is. And so this is the only world we can have true knowledge of. Now, if you take this sort of diagram and cut it in half, right, you got the lower realm, the visible, and the intellectual and the higher spectrum. But you can divide it up even further. For him, there's these 4 sections. There's the first section, section A, which is the imagination. The second level is belief. The third is thought. And the fourth one is understanding. I have all the Greek terms up here as well. So the parallel in the story, remember the allegory of the cave? The lower realm, the realm of images and imagination, that's the shadows. The realm of belief and opinion and all that, that's where the people are carrying the puppets and the fire in the cave. The stairs that are leading up out of the cave and the exit, right? That's the third and the fourth levels. Okay? So I've got all this filled out, and we're going to have to discuss this in more detail next time, because I realize that just telling you this is probably not enough. I need to do some more explaining. But basically, if you look at the lower level, where is that in terms of our universe. For him, things that are located here are, you know, shadows, just like in the story, these shadows, these images. So, you know, in the world of the physical world, we are familiar with shadows, right? Like, for instance, a shadow of a tree, or the reflection of the tree in the water or in a mirror, okay? The second realm is the realm of physical stuff. So the trees, the physical trees, they're the ones that cause the shadows. They cause the reflection of the tree. Moving further up, in the third realm, this is the realm of thought, we start to develop a techne. Anybody really quick on the top of your head know what techne is? You remember that word from the Apology? This is what the craftsmen had knowledge of. They had knowledge of their techne. What is that? What do craftsmen have knowledge of?
The crafts.
Their craft, yes. Thank you,
Techniques.
thank you. Yes. So technically, you could think like maybe broader. It doesn't just have craft, skill, discipline, science, whatever, school of thought. So maybe with trees, let's just keep it with the same example. I don't know what you'd call that. Like botany is like study of plants, but I'm sure there's like a more specific, like someone who just studies trees, or maybe somebody who's like, you know, knows how to grow trees, or somebody who knows like which trees are good to build with or whatever. It's a knowledge of all trees, not just looking at an actual individual tree with our senses. And then at the top, and this really we're gonna have to wait till next time because it's gonna take more explaining than this, but it's good because Rev, thank you so much. Your comment earlier kind of explains what's going on in the higher realm of dialectic. Dialectic for Socrates and Plato is not, we're not doing techne, we're not doing how to grow trees, how to compose music, you know, how to make the best creme brulee. You know, those are all techne, those are all skills. Dialectic is how does all this fit together? And the way you do dialectic is exactly how Rev described, by engaging in dialogue and debate with others and trying to unravel the truth, by you know, exposing yourself to criticism and for looking for the imperfections in your own views and trying to improve upon those views, and slowly but surely rising and rising up till you get to the truth and until you produce what Plato calls a logos. That's what the dialectic is supposed to produce, is a logos. And that word logos has a lot of connotations. You know, it's a Greek word that means a lot of different things in different contexts. But here, I take Plato to be saying that the dialectic produces a true rational account, a true rational explanation. So if we do a dialectic on beauty, we understand what true beauty is. We do a dialectic on justice, we get a logos of what true justice is. So I'm getting really long-winded here, and I'm already out of time, so I'm really sorry. I promised you I'd let you go early. Didn't really let you go very early, and I'm still going to stick around, though, in case somebody wants to talk about the paper, has any questions about the class. Anybody that wants to leave, though, you're free to go. Class is dismissed. Have a great weekend, etc., etc. But I'll hang tight for a minute or two, just in case there's, you know, a student or two who wants to stick around and chat about the topics or anything. A lot of people are dropping off, it looks like.
I mean, we still have time. We still have a class or two between the class.
Yeah, we've got till I think a week from today, and if I'm getting enough pushback, I might even extend it a day or two. You know, we'll see how it goes. But yeah, we can definitely talk about it next time as well.
Okay. Well, have a good day.
All right, you too. Take care.
All the topics are on Blackboard, correct?
That's correct. They're all posted. They're ready to go.
All right, thank you.
What's your format?
I don't really care. You know, you can use whatever you're comfortable with, MLA, APA. You don't really have to cite or go do outside research. If you're just using our textbook, just put the page number and the author is fine with me, you know. Just be consistent.
Okay.
2 to 3 pages, 12-point font is about the length, but as far as like the format, like I don't care. APA, MLA, whatever you know, whatever you're comfortable with.
Okay. Bye.
Have a good one. Have a good weekend. I guess that's it then. I'm going to close it up.
Professor, I had a question.
Yeah, go ahead.
This is Jennifer. I had emailed you earlier.
Oh, right, about office hours. Yeah.
Right. I don't know if this is a dumb question. I don't mean to upset you or anything, but under the Plato tab, I see apology topics, and then I see symposium topic. I'm assuming symposium topic is the essay topic.
Okay, that's not a dumb question at all, and maybe I should be clearer about it. But if I'm getting you right, you're asking a question that about 20 students have asked me. Well, maybe not 20. I'm exaggerating, but you pick one. You can either write about the symposium or you can write about the apology. You don't have to write about all three, right?
Okay.
Yeah. So yeah, don't write 2 or 3 essays. Just whichever one of those you think you do better at. That you're like, hey, I have more to say about this one. I like that topic. Just take your pick. You don't have to write about both. If you have an idea for something else, like another paper topic, you can also come up with your own. You don't have to use mine. But if you do that, make sure you maybe email me and make me okay at first. But yeah, just don't worry about don't write 3 essays, please. I'll only grade 1 if you do.
Right. Thank you so much.
Cool. All right, thank you.
So in those topics, there's different topics, right? And then like in one topic, it's separate too. Like there's another like separation. So
well, I think it was the apology. You've only got 2 choices. You got the one about death, and then the one. What's the other one about humility and upholding the truth? So those are the 2.
Yeah, like humility.
And then the symposium is just pick one of the speeches and critique it or defend it.
Oh, okay.
So,
gotcha. Yeah, I mean.
Cool.
So for your class hours, so you're gonna be here on Tuesday around what does it say here? Like
10 to 11. Yeah, my office.
10 to 11.
Yeah, 10 to 11, and then 2:30 to 3:30. And if I don't, if I don't, like sometimes I have it on my phone because I'll be away from my computer, and for some reason it'll close the meeting if I'm not on it or something, or I think I accidentally hit a button or something. So if you can't get a hold of me during my office hours, I'm gonna type in my phone number here in the chat box, and don't overuse this, but if you're having trouble getting me to let you in the waiting room, just text that number there, and just let me know, hey, this is Rev, I'm your TSU student, could I speak with you in office hours, and then I'll figure out what's going on, and I'll get you logged in.
Okay, thank you. And regarding the like extra credit for the I attended your thing,
I need to give you credit for that. I forgot, and I just noticed that
that was really interesting, by the way. Like all those stuff. I was like how do you say, culture shock kind of thing. Like those ideas were really like something that I never. It was out of my context, something like that. So it's like really
radical.
Interesting. It's really interesting. Yeah. So I was just like listening to it. I was like, wow, like this is really interesting.
Yeah, I'm glad you came. Yeah, I'm glad you were there.
Yeah. But yeah, that was really fun. I was just listening. I was like, I'm scared to like input something because I feel like, these people are all like working people who's like, who knows a lot about this stuff, and I'm like, I'm just a student.
Some of them do. Yeah, some of them are like, you could tell they knew what they're talking about. That one lady though, I don't know if you were there till the end. That touched.
That lady. Yeah, I was like, I didn't even understand what she was trying to say, but like, I was like, okay, well, she's trying to make a point. So
yeah, I could kind of understand. Like, were you there when that guy Steven jumped in and was like, kind of called her out?
I think so.
Yeah, that Australian guy was like, "It's not all about you. We can't understand half of what you're saying, and like you need to make your point. You just keep talking and talking." And I was like, "Yeah," and she's like, "Well, I don't see anybody else saying that." I was like, "Well, I kind of agree with them," and yeah. I was like, I keep having to
interrupt. It was for 2 hours, and she was talking for like at least an hour or something.
No, she kept going on and on, and she didn't really say anything.
And I was like,
I was trying to be polite, but I had to keep interrupting her. But yeah, I think we might have scared her off though, so she probably won't be at the next one. But we'll see. I'm glad you made it. But yeah, next time I'm on Blackboard, I'll post your extra credit. If you don't see it in a week, you might remind me, but I'll do that. Yeah.
Thank you.
Cool. Thanks a lot. Have a good weekend. See you.
You too.